The world changed forever on September 11, 2001, when Al-Qaeda launched devastating attacks on American soil. The phrase 9/11 became synonymous with a new era of global conflict, and the U.S. responded with overwhelming force, launching wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. However, these wars ultimately drained America's soft power, leading to the decline of its status as the world's civil superpower. Over 2 decades of war in Afghanistan and 8 years in Iraq reshaped global geopolitics, giving rise to a multipolar world. But how did the United States lose its civil superpower status? Why did American leaders deceive the public? And how did George W. Bush manage to secure a second term despite these failures? In this final episode of History of America by Daiko Tsunojano, we unravel these questions. Just 4 days after the attacks, President George W. Bush convened a high-level meeting at Camp David with key officials, including Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld and Deputy Defense Secretary Paul Wolfowitz. The agenda: chart the course for America's war on terror. 3 main targets were identified: Al-Qaeda, the Taliban in Afghanistan, and Saddam Hussein's Iraq. While Wolfowitz pushed for an immediate invasion of Iraq, President Bush initially approved only military action in Afghanistan, believing Iraq's involvement in 9/11 was not yet clear. America needed Pakistan's cooperation for an assault on Afghanistan, as Pakistan had recognized the Taliban regime and controlled key trade routes. General Pervez Musharraf, Pakistan's military ruler, later claimed he was threatened into compliance. According to his autobiography, he received an ultimatum from U.S. officials: either support America or face devastating consequences. Despite later denials by American officials, Pakistan became a key ally in the war effort. On October 7, 2001, the United States and the United Kingdom launched Operation Enduring Freedom, targeting Taliban strongholds. Using advanced weaponry, including the devastating 15,000-pound Daisy Cutter bombs, the U.S. conducted relentless airstrikes. The Taliban, however, quickly melted into the rugged terrain, evading complete destruction. Within months, the U.S. installed a new government under Hamid Karzai, but the Taliban was far from defeated. The war evolved into a prolonged insurgency, with the Taliban launching a series of deadly attacks over the years. While the U.S. appeared victorious in Afghanistan, its focus shifted to Iraq. The Bush administration justified the invasion with claims that Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction, WMDs. U.S. intelligence agencies and media outlets propagated these allegations, despite Iraq being under heavy sanctions and strict UN inspections for a decade. Ignoring global opposition, including resistance from allies like France and Germany, the U.S., alongside Britain and Australia, launched Operation Iraqi Freedom on March 20, 2003. The Iraqi military, weakened by years of sanctions, collapsed quickly. By May 1, President Bush declared mission accomplished. However, what seemed like a swift victory soon turned into a nightmare. Following Saddam Hussein's capture in December 2003, the U.S. expected the insurgency to subside. Instead, attacks against American forces escalated. The CIA's Iraq Survey Group eventually confirmed what many suspected: there were no WMDs. The 9/11 Commission further debunked any operational ties between Saddam and Al-Qaeda. Despite this, Bush faced no consequences for his administration's lies and was re-elected in 2004. The situation in Iraq worsened, with American casualties rising. The Abu Ghraib prison scandal, where U.S. soldiers were found torturing Iraqi prisoners, further eroded America's credibility. By 2007, Iraq had become a quagmire, leading to growing anti-war sentiment in the U.S. In 2008, Barack Obama won the presidency on a promise to withdraw troops. Obama began withdrawing troops, and by December 2011, the last U.S. soldiers left Iraq. However, American forces later returned under the pretext of combating ISIS. Meanwhile, in Afghanistan, the U.S. faced a resilient Taliban insurgency. Despite efforts to train an Afghan army, Taliban infiltrators undermined U.S. operations, leading to devastating insider attacks. In 2020, the Trump administration signed a peace deal with the Taliban, setting a withdrawal date. When Joe Biden took office in 2021, the withdrawal was completed in a chaotic and humiliating fashion, reminiscent of the fall of Saigon. The Taliban swiftly regained control of Afghanistan, erasing 2 decades of U.S. efforts. The images of desperate Afghan civilians clinging to departing aircraft at Kabul airport were a stark reminder of America's failed mission. The war on terror cost the U.S. trillions of dollars and thousands of lives. In Afghanistan, 2,465 American soldiers perished, while in Iraq, the death toll exceeded 4,490. The wars also resulted in war crimes, with abuses at Guantanamo Bay and Abu Ghraib damaging America's moral standing. Beyond the immediate loss of life, the economic burden of these conflicts led to domestic challenges in the U.S. Trillions of dollars spent on war could have been invested in infrastructure, healthcare, and education. Instead, these resources were funneled into conflicts that yielded no lasting victories. Ultimately, these wars shattered America's global dominance. The era of unchallenged U.S. supremacy gave way to a multipolar world, where powers like China and Russia began asserting themselves. The failed wars in Afghanistan and Iraq marked the end of America's status as the world's civil superpower, reshaping global geopolitics for years to come. This concludes History of America, Season 3, covering America's rise, wars, and decline. Watch our previous episodes to explore the full journey, from the age of exploration to modern conflicts. The legacy of these wars continues to shape international relations, and the lessons learned from these decades of conflict will undoubtedly influence future American foreign policy.